Charles and Anna Richmond were filled with excitement because they had just purchased their new home and were welcoming their first child. He doted on her and waited on her hand and foot. Those 7.5 months were electric for the both of them. She had been nesting, as they call it, prepping the house for the baby's arrival, arranging and rearranging the nursery, trying her best to anticipate every single thing the baby might need. She took her leave early, so she treated this like it was her job and worked tirelessly day and night. Everything had to be perfect. It was early in the evening when Charles arrived home from 2 different ice cream shops, armed with pints of her favorite flavors from both. A few pots and pans sat above the stove, some with liquid and some empty. There were measuring cups, a food scale, bags of various powders, and unmarked bottles strewn about. It looked like a science lab. He checked the oven. Perhaps she had baked something to go with the ice cream, but it was empty. He peeked into the rooms downstairs, but she was nowhere to be found. He heard a shuffling upstairs. She was probably in the nursery, sorting and resorting the baby's clothes or the little library of children's classics they had collected, as she had done countless times before. He left the ice cream on the kitchen counter and headed for the stairs. He called out to her. The shuffling stopped abruptly, but there was no response. He felt the air thicken as the shuffling resumed, climbed the stairs with each encumbering step. He stood a few feet away from the French doors to the baby's room. One was slightly ajar and he caught the glimpse of his wife rushing back and forth, completely entranced by whatever task she was doing. He called out to her again, and she stopped once more. She had a couple of scares throughout the pregnancy, but they had gotten through it together. This felt different though. She seemed manic, almost feverish and palpable. He hadn't moved. His gaze drifted to the floor as he became lost in thought over the events of the previous months. He looked up at the doors and gasped. He didn't expect to meet her stare. Only part of her face was showing, but he knew something did not look right. He called her again. She shut the door. He cautiously stepped forward until his ear was against the door. He could hear her humming, softly, some sweet tune that was simultaneously familiar, yet alien. There were no locks on these doors, but he was hesitant to enter, feeling almost like a stranger in his own home. How silly am I, he thought. Before he could make a move, she called out to him, this time beckoning him to come in and see what she had done. The room was bare, save for a single dining chair off to the side. She sat cradling something in a baby's blanket. "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked him. "It's finally the way I've always wanted it to be." She held the blanket closer. He stood still. The room hadn't changed in months. It was as empty as ever. Only thing new was the baby's blanket, which she was cuddling. She cooed gentle words at the blanket. He couldn't see what was wrapped inside. "It's perfect," she said. In a corner masked by the shadows stood an eerie figure. Long white stringy hair fell upon a slender frame kissed by the curse of rigor mortis. A daunting face emerged from the shadows, with hand-like talons folded neatly over each other. It was as if the fiend were watching a theatrical unfolding of events of his own malicious doing. "Do you want to hold her?" she asked. "Do you want to meet your daddy, princess?" She nuzzled into the blanket. She gave the blanket to him. Surprised by the weight, he attempted to open it. "No, don't open it. Don't look at her right now. She's asleep and it took forever to get her down." Anne got up so Charles could sit on the single piece of furniture in the room. He held this thing in his arms and looked at Anne. The doctor called it a hysterical pregnancy, born from the grief of losing their baby so far into the 3rd trimester. Therapists said things like this might happen, and it'd be best for him to support her throughout. She approached him, cooing at the blanket. Finally, she whispered, "Finally, we can be the family I've always wanted." And with that, he removed the blanket, his face frozen in fear at his last sight. 3, 2, 1.